Welcome to CreepyTalks, where hidden fears come alive through chilling horror tales. Dare to listen as every story pulls you deeper into the darkness. Story 1. The First Night It Moved. Everyone said winter spirits were just stories, but the one watching me knew my name before I even arrived. I never planned to stay alone in that cabin, not in December, not in a freezing part of the mountains, and definitely not in a place where the snow swallowed every sound like the world was holding its breath. But life has strange ways of pushing you where you don't want to go. The breakdown I had at work was bad enough that my aunt insisted I take time off. "Stay at the cabin," she said. "It'll clear your head." She never mentioned anything else. No warnings, no strange history, nothing. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt like something had been waiting. I arrived on December 2nd, around 3:45 p.m. The sun was already slipping behind the tall line of pine trees, throwing long shadows across the snow. The cabin looked normal enough, small, wooden, with a stone chimney that didn't work anymore. The deck creaked under my boots, and the cold wind bit into my skin like tiny needles. Inside, it smelled of dust, old wood, and pine cleaners. A little outdated, but manageable. What I didn't like was how silent it was. No cars, no neighbors, no animals. Even the wind outside felt muted, almost like the world didn't want to disturb whatever lived here. I unpacked, set my phone to charge, and lit a couple of candles because the overhead lights flickered in a slow, rhythmic pattern. I convinced myself it was old wiring, but something else bothered me. A heavy frame hung above the fireplace, a winter painting showing a tall, dark forest and a pale shape standing between the trees. Almost human, but not quite. Its face was blurry. Its eyes were white. Its head tilted unnaturally to one side. I stared at it longer than I should have, feeling a tightness in my chest. Something about the figure bothered me. It felt familiar. Not because I'd seen it before, but because it felt like it had seen me before. I shook the thought off. What else could I do? I came here to recover, not to spiral again. Night fell early, swallowing the cabin completely. By 9 p.m., I was already under thick blankets, scrolling my phone. The wind battered the windows like invisible hands pushing against them. The temperature dropped sharply. My breath floated in front of my face. I shouldn't be able to see my breath inside the cabin. That's when the heater shut off with a loud metallic clap. I groaned, annoyed, and stepped out of bed. My socks soaked up the cold of the wooden floor instantly. I opened the closet where the heater unit sat. It smelled strange inside, like wet earth, rotting leaves, and something metallic I couldn't identify. But the heater looked fine. I closed the closet door. Then, tap. I froze. Not the heater. Not the walls. The window beside my bed. A single, gentle, deliberate tap, like someone testing the glass with one finger. I turned slowly. The curtains were drawn, but a pale glow seeped through the fabric. Moonlight, or something else. I waited, counting the seconds between my own breaths. Then, tap, tap, tap. This time faster. I felt my stomach drop as a sensation washed over me. Someone was outside. Someone was watching me. I stepped closer to the window, forcing myself to grab the curtain edge with shaking fingers. My brain screamed at me to stop, but curiosity dragged me forward. I pulled the curtain open. At first, I didn't see anything, just frost on the glass, a perfect layer of white crystals. Beyond that, the snow-covered ground reflected the moonlight like a mirror. Then I noticed it, a shape, right outside the window. Too still, too close, too wrong. A pale face pressed against the glass, half covered in frost, staring inside. Its eyes were wide, not human-wide. Too wide, like the lids didn't know how to blink. The mouth stretched into a slow, frozen smile. I stumbled backward, kicking a candle over. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat a gunshot. For a moment I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The face didn't move. It didn't tap anymore. It just watched. Finally, I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, but the screen was black, dead. It had been plugged in for hours. Why wasn't it working? I turned back to the window. The face was gone. Only frost remained. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. Every sound, the wind, the creaking wood, the shifting of snow, sounded like footsteps. When the sky finally brightened into a dull winter morning, I stepped outside to check the snow. I wish I hadn't. Right below my bedroom window were footprints. Not boot prints, not animal prints. Bare, human-like footprints. Except they were too long, the toes pointed, the arch unnaturally stretched, and the snow inside them wasn't just packed down, it was melted, forming shallow pools of water that had frozen over. Something had been standing there for a long time, watching me. But what terrified me more was that the footprints led to my window, but not away. I turned in every direction, scanning the forest, the snow, the empty path. No tracks, no signs, nothing. As if the thing simply vanished. I hurried back inside, shut the door, and locked it, even though locks probably didn't matter to whatever that was. My phone refused to turn on. The lights flickered again, and the painting above the fireplace, the pale shape in the forest, it looked closer than before, like it had moved, just slightly. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew better. Story 2. The footprints in the snow. Ghosts don't leave footprints, but whatever watched me that night definitely did. I didn't open the door again for hours. I just sat at the small wooden table in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee, listening to the silence pressing against the walls of the cabin. Outside, the world looked painfully normal. Snow hanging from the branches, the forest swaying gently, a few birds picking at whatever they could find. But the footprints were still there, like a bruise staining the morning. I must have stared at them out the window for 20 minutes, my stomach tightening each time I traced the shape of those impossible toes. I'd grown up in the mountains. I'd seen wolf tracks, bear tracks, elk tracks. I knew the difference between human and animal prints. These prints weren't either. They looked like something trying to imitate human feet and failing. When the wind blew, it made a low moaning sound, whistling against the window frames. It felt like a warning. Around noon, the sun came out, thin, pale, barely warming the snow. I finally forced myself outside again, bundled in a jacket, boots laced tight. The cold air slapped my face awake. I crouched near the strange tracks, ignoring how my breath shook. The melted centers glittered like tiny frozen puddles. I pressed a finger against one of the imprints. It was colder than the surrounding snow. Much colder, almost like whatever made the print wasn't just warm, it was burning hot. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake the chill. My fingertips felt numb. Then I noticed something else. The prints weren't random. They formed a perfect semicircle around my bedroom window, as if whatever that was had been pacing, watching me sleep, studying me. The thought made bile rise in my throat. Before I could think more, a muffled thump came from inside the cabin. I froze. Another thump. Then something soft scraped across the wooden floor. I hurried inside, nearly slipping on the doorway rug. For a moment, I just listened. Silence. Maybe something fell. Maybe the old cabin just shifted. But deep down, I felt something else. It wasn't the cabin. I walked room to room. Nothing was out of place. Bed sheets untouched, closet closed, the heater's metal door still shut tight. Then I entered the living room. My heart dropped. The painting above the fireplace, the winter forest scene, the pale figure inside it, was gone. I blinked. Once. Twice. I stepped closer, holding my breath. The painting was the same. Same trees, same snow, same dark forest background. But the figure that had been standing there yesterday, the tall, stretched, pale shape, was missing. It wasn't in the corner of the painting. It wasn't behind a tree. It wasn't anywhere. I backed away so fast I bumped into the coffee table. My phone, still dead, slid off and hit the floor with a dull plastic thud. "What the hell?" I whispered. I didn't like how the air felt. Thicker, colder, as if something invisible was holding its breath inside the room with me. The heater clicked loudly. Once, twice, like bones snapping. Then the closet door rattled. I turned slowly. The heater closet door shook again. Only once. Then it stopped. "Please," I whispered to myself. "Please, just be the pipes." But I knew better. I forced myself to approach the closet, praying nothing would jump out. My hand trembled on the doorknob. I opened it fast. Better to rip the fear off like a bandage. The heater sat quietly inside, the metallic smell stronger than before. I stepped back out and shut the door again. That's when I noticed something new. A faint smear on the floorboards, a thin trail, like water dripping, leading toward the attic ladder. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. Slowly I followed the trail, my socks soaking in the wet marks. I reached the pull-down ladder and hesitated. The attic was the one part of the cabin I hadn't explored much. It felt wrong the first time I'd gone up, almost like a place meant to be left alone. But the trail continued upward. I tugged the string, and the wooden ladder unfolded with a long, groaning creak. Dust poured down in slow, drifting clouds. The smell hit me immediately. Old paper, mold, and something earthy, like soil mixed with rot. I climbed up. The attic was dim, the only light being what seeped through the thin cracks in the roof. Boxes were stacked along the edges, covered with blankets and dust thick enough to write on. Christmas decorations leaned against a busted rocking chair. A few old suitcases sat in one corner. Everything looked untouched, except one thing. The crate. The same wooden crate I had seen the first day, still sitting in the middle of the attic, wide rusted nails hammered along the sides, a rotting tag hanging loosely from the top. I crouched near it, my breath turning white in front of me again. The tag read the same words: "Do not open, December only." The handwriting looked rushed, messy, afraid. My throat tightened as I touched the lid. It was warm. Why would a crate sitting in a freezing attic be warm? I leaned closer. My ear brushed the side of the crate. Something shifted inside it, softly, like cloth rubbing against wood or skin. I jerked back so fast I almost fell down the ladder. "What are you?" I whispered. A sudden creak echoed behind me, not from the crate, from the attic floor. I spun around. A shadow moved in the far corner, thin, long, bent the wrong way. For a moment I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dim light. But then the shadow stretched, longer, until it touched the ceiling. I scrambled down the ladder, missing a step and sliding onto the floor painfully. I kicked the ladder up and slammed the hatch shut. My chest heaved. Sweat beaded down my forehead, even though the cabin felt freezing. I backed away slowly. Then I heard it, a soft tap, not on the hatch, on the attic wood itself. as if something above me was crawling toward the hatch, pressing its fingers, too many fingers, against the boards, trying to find a way out. I stumbled into the bedroom, grabbed my jacket, and shoved the dresser against the door. My hands shook as I pushed the heavy wood across the floor. My breathing was too loud, my heartbeat too fast, my thoughts too scattered. I needed to call my aunt. Even dead, my phone should have turned on if I held the power button long enough. But when I pressed it, nothing happened. No light, no sound, no battery symbol, just darkness. Then, shh, someone whispered right behind my door. My eyes widened. I pressed myself against the wall. The whisper came again, slow, soft, drawn out, like someone exhaling my name, like someone learning it, testing it. Ha! Eyes! I covered my mouth to stop myself from gasping. The doorknob rattled gently, not violently, not in anger, but slowly, curiously, like something was trying to imitate how humans check a door. The whisper slid under the crack. Let me in. My blood froze. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a long, unbearable moment, the whisper faded, and footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps, moved away from my bedroom, across the living room, toward the attic again. I listened until the sound stopped, but the final noise that echoed through the quiet cabin was the attic hatch creaking open on its own. Story 3, The Thing in the Attic. I thought the cabin was haunted. I was wrong. It wasn't a ghost. It was something that remembers every winter and comes back for who it wants. The moment the attic hatch creaked open, every part of my body turned to ice. I didn't move. I couldn't. The sound echoed through the cabin like the whole house was exhaling, long, dry, and ancient. The dresser pressed against my bedroom door suddenly felt small, flimsy, useless. I listened. Silence. Then a soft thump above me. Something was up there. Something awake. I backed into the corner of the room, breathing through my teeth to stay quiet. My heart hammered, each beat painfully loud inside my chest. Another thump, and another. Then something dragged, slow, deliberate, across the attic floorboards. I shut my eyes tight, praying it would stop, praying it would go away, praying it wasn't what I saw in the painting or outside the window. But the dragging didn't stop. If anything, it got closer. A long creak sounded right above my head, as though something extremely heavy had slowly pressed its full weight down on the ceiling beams. The wood groaned. Another step. It was walking toward the hatch. The same hatch I had slammed shut not 10 minutes ago. My hands shook uncontrollably as I grabbed the only thing I could. One of the thick wooden bedposts I had unscrewed years ago for a repair. It wasn't a weapon, not really, but it was better than nothing. I stood in the corner, clutching it against my chest. The footsteps above me stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Every second felt like the world was counting down to something I didn't want to know. Then, thud. Directly above the bedroom door this time. Not the hatch. It was crawling across the ceiling, trying to learn where I was. I pressed my back into the wall. Another thud. Then a soft, scraping sound, like nails trailing across the ceiling. But there were too many nails, too many fingers. The shape moved slowly, deliberately, following the layout of the room from above. And then, tap, tap, tap. Tiny sounds from the ceiling. At first, I thought it was the same tapping from the window. But no, this tapping spelled something. Tap, tap, pause, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. My skin crawled. It was knocking, like someone tapping on glass, like someone testing something. It reminded me of a child tapping on an aquarium, trying to get the creature inside to move. I wasn't stupid. The creature wasn't lost. It wasn't confused. It was trying to figure out where I was, trying to understand me, trying to learn me. A burst of cold air shot from under the door. I lifted my feet instinctively. Something was moving out there. Then slowly, creak. The dresser I had pushed against the door nudged forward. Not violently, not all at once. A tiny gentle push. Then another, and another, as if the thing outside was simply curiously placing its hands on the dresser, feeling it, testing it, understanding it, like it was thinking, like it was deciding. I clamped a hand over my mouth, holding back a sound I didn't even realize I'd made. The dresser moved another inch. Then, silence. A long, thick silence. Then, slide. The dresser moved half an inch more. Enough for me to know the truth. This thing wasn't mindlessly attacking. It was learning how to get in. My throat tightened so badly I could barely swallow. Suddenly, something slammed against the roof. Once, twice, then footsteps. Not human, not even close. The steps were uneven. One long stride, then a short, awkward one. Then another long stride. Like something that was learning to walk on legs that weren't meant to bend the way it wanted. A moment passed, then a muffled sound. A long, shaky breath. Right above my head. Something was smelling me through the ceiling. The thought nearly made me vomit. I didn't know how long I stood there trapped. Minutes, maybe hours. Time didn't make sense anymore. The sound would stop, start again, stop, drag, crawl, breathe, over and over. Then finally, after what felt like an eternity, a single thump, then nothing. The attic fell silent. So did the cabin. No wind, no footsteps, no breathing, no scratching, nothing. Just silence. Terrifying silence. At first, I thought maybe it had left. I knew that was stupid. Things like that don't just leave. But I waited. 5 minutes, 10, 20, still nothing. I lowered the bedpost slowly and sat on the floor, exhausted. Adrenaline drained so fast my hands wouldn't stop trembling. But I didn't dare sleep. Not even close. Instead, I sat there listening, waiting. That's when I noticed something strange. The painting. From where I sat, I could see a small slice of the living room through the bedroom doorway. The fireplace mantel was visible, and the painting was different. I crawled slowly, silently, until I reached an angle where I could see it clearly. My heart nearly stopped. The tall, pale figure was back in the painting, but this time, its face was no longer turned toward the forest. It was turned directly toward the viewer, directly toward me. Its smile was stretched too far across its face, splitting into impossible angles like something trying to mimic a human expression. And its eyes were not white anymore. They were dark, shiny, reflective, like real eyes. Not paint, real. It felt like someone had cut holes in the canvas and the thing behind the painting was staring through them. I backed away slowly until my back hit the dresser again. The cabin wasn't haunted. It wasn't cursed. It wasn't abandoned. It was occupied. The attic boards shifted one last time. Something heavy settled into place. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound. Not breathing, not scratching, not crawling. Rocking, like someone huge was sitting in the attic. Rocking slowly in the old broken rocking chair I saw earlier. Forward, backward, forward. The wood groaned with each movement. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was frozen in the corner until sunlight finally bled through the windows. Only then did the rocking stop. The attic fell silent again. The cabin warmed slightly, My breath stopped fogging in front of me. The air loosened just a little. Whatever watched me through the night didn't move during the day, but it never left, not for a second. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Tonight, it would come down from the attic. Story 4. The night it stood beside my bed. Every night it watched me from the window, but on the fourth night, it stepped inside. I didn't sleep the night I read the diary. How could I? Every page smelled of rot, like old dust mixed with damp leaves, and every word felt like a countdown to December 24th, to something it called the watching night. I checked the clock. 3:12 a.m. My room felt colder than it should. Not winter cold, but something is standing behind you cold. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and tried to force myself to sleep, but every time my eyes closed, I saw the photograph again. The girl, wide-eyed, smiling unnaturally, with the tall, dark thing right behind her, watching, always watching. The scratching started again. It was faint at first. Scratch, scratch, scratch. My heart locked in place. No, I whispered, not again. The scratching got louder. It wasn't at the window. It wasn't at the wall. It was at the floor, directly under my bed. I froze, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Then, thump. Something hit the underside of my mattress so hard it lifted me an inch. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Another thump, then another, as if something or someone was crawling underneath me, slowly, deliberately, learning the shape of my body through the mattress. My phone lay on my side table. If I moved even an inch to grab it, whatever was beneath me would hear. The scratching stopped. The house went so silent I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then it whispered, a low, dry voice coming from right below my spine, a voice that sounded like winter wind passing through dead branches. I see you. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. My entire body locked in terror. Then before I could react, the bed shifted, like something extremely tall was pushing up from below, trying to lift itself into my room. I jumped out of bed and backed into the wall, trembling so hard my bones felt like they were vibrating. "Get out!" I screamed, even though I knew it was useless. My bed dropped back into place with a dull thud. The room fell silent again. For a moment I thought it was gone, but then the shadow appeared. The shadow at the door. My bedroom door was closed, but a shadow was standing behind it, a long, stretched silhouette, wrong in every possible way. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. Its arms reached so low the fingertips brushed the floor. And its hand, God, its hand, pressed slowly against the wood. My breath caught. Don't open, don't open, don't open. The doorknob twitched, only once, but that was enough to send a bolt of panic through me so sharp I almost fainted. I backed toward the window, ready to jump if I had to, but then the doorknob went still, and the shadow melted, not faded, not vanished, melted, like ink sinking into water. I stayed rooted against the window, shaking until my legs gave out and I slid to the floor. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but when the room finally became warm again and the world felt real again, I crawled to my bed, grabbed the diary, and opened it to the next page. The next dated entry was exactly what I feared. The diary entry. 24, the night before she disappeared. It read, "It has learned my room. It knows where I sleep. It knows how I breathe." My hands started shaking violently. Another entry, "It doesn't stay outside anymore. Tonight, it stood beside my bed. My blood ran cold, because minutes ago, that's exactly what it tried to do to me. I turned the page again. Another entry. This one was smeared like the girl had been writing while crying, or shaking, or both. It whispered my name tonight. When I close my eyes, I can still hear it. When I open them, I see it in the mirror behind me. I dropped the diary. It hit the floor with a dull thump. My chest tightened. My breath came in shallow gasps. "Why is it happening again?" I whispered. "Why now? Was I imagining this? Was it sleep paralysis? Was it trauma from my burglar bite incident years ago?" No. No hallucination scratches your bed from underneath. No trauma whispers to you in a voice colder than winter air. Something was here, and it wasn't done. It came back at 4:09 a.m. The room had warmed. The fear was fading. But then I heard a sound so soft I almost missed it. Not scratching, not knocking, just breathing, slow, long, deep, as if the thing had lungs the size of my room. I looked around wildly. The breathing grew louder. Then I realized it wasn't around me, it was behind me. I turned slowly to face the window. My heart nearly stopped, because the glass wasn't reflecting my room anymore. It was reflecting something standing directly behind me, a tall shape, long fingers, hollow eyes, bent posture, and a grin carved wider than a human could ever smile. Watching me, just watching. The reflection moved, but I didn't. It was inching closer, its mouth spreading wider, its head lowering like it wanted to whisper into my ear. I whipped around, ready to run. Nothing. No one was there. But the reflection stayed. It stayed in the glass, even though the space behind me was completely empty. That's when I understood. It didn't need to be in the room to watch me. It only needed a surface. Any surface. Glass, mirrors, screens, shadows. Anywhere my reflection could appear, its reflection could appear too. I grabbed my blanket, wrapped it around the mirror on my wardrobe, and unplugged every LED device in the room. My hands were ice, my mouth dry. I barely made it back into bed before something heavy leaned against the window from outside. The glass creaked, a long, slow pressure, like a tall face pressing gently against it. I stared at the shape in the darkness, unable to move, unable to breathe. It stayed there for hours, watching me, waiting. And when dawn finally came, the shape at the window faded like smoke. But before it disappeared completely, I could swear it whispered, "Tonight." Story 5. The night it came into the house. It used to watch me from the window, but on the 5th night, it didn't watch. It hunted. Morning should have made me feel safe, but when I walked downstairs, the cold was still there. The same bone-deep cold I felt when it whispered from under my bed. The December sun was shining, but inside the house, the light felt dead, as if the warmth couldn't enter. I checked every door, every lock, every window. Nothing was broken, but something was wrong. The air felt bruised, and worse, the front door was unlocked. I hadn't touched it since last night. I knew I hadn't. My stomach dropped. I locked it quickly and backed away, scanning the room for any sign of footprints, shadows, anything. But the thing left nothing behind. It always left nothing, like it walked without touching the ground. I tried to calm myself, sat on the couch, and looked at the diary again. The girl's entry stopped 3 pages before the end, but those last unfinished words wouldn't leave my mind. It wants to be let inside. I don't know what happens when it gets in. Now, I feared I was about to find out. I heard something moving in the hallway around 11:40 a.m. I was in the kitchen making tea when something creaked upstairs. Not a random house settling sound, not a pipe expansion. This was a footstep, slow, heavy, deliberate. I froze mid-pour, kettle in hand. Another click on the wooden floorboards, then another, coming from my bedroom. I didn't want to go check. I wanted to run out the door and never come back. But the front door suddenly rattled harshly, as if someone pushed it from the outside. My heart stopped. Then, thud, thud, thud. 3 knocks. Not fists, not hands. Something harder, like long knuckles or bones. I stepped backward into the kitchen, eyes locked on the door. No, this wasn't right. The thing wasn't outside, because I could still hear footsteps upstairs, which meant, what was knocking? I didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, from the hall, leading upstairs, creak, a single footstep descending the staircase. Very slow, very heavy, like a tall, crooked figure learning how to walk downstairs using limbs far too long. I held on to the counter as my knees threatened to give out. "Please," I whispered, "please stop." But the footsteps grew louder, closer, creak, creak, creak. I slid my hand silently to the drawer where I kept a kitchen knife. My fingers trembled so badly I could barely grip it. And then the footsteps stopped halfway down the stairs, dead silent, as if it was listening to where I was standing. I didn't dare move, not even to blink. The thing spoke again. A whisper drifted from the staircase, soft, dry, non-human. "I am inside." My blood froze. No more whispers from under the bed. No more silhouettes outside my window. No more watching. Now, it entered. The stair creaked again. Then another footstep. Closer. I backed into the kitchen wall, cornered. The lights flickered. The shadows on the floor stretched unnaturally, pulling toward the hallway, bending like puppet strings being tugged. And then I saw its hand. Just the hand at first. Long, thin fingers curled around the stair railing, bending the wood slightly. The skin was ashen gray, almost translucent, stretched too tight over bones. My throat closed. The hand slid down slowly, as if savoring every inch. I stared in paralyzed terror as the hand lowered, and its head followed. The first real look at its face. It peeked from behind the wall at the bottom of the stairs, and I wished I had never seen it. Its face was wrong, stretched, hollow, like someone had sculpted it from melted wax and then carved out deep eye sockets afterward. But the worst part, it was smiling, a long, splitting smile that reached nearly to its ears. It wasn't a grin of joy. It was a grin of possession. The thing tilted its head at an unnatural angle, like a bird analyzing prey. It looked directly at me. My breath hitched in my throat. The thing's smile widened, not slowly, not gradually. It snapped. Snap. Like a puppet's jaw being yanked open. Its hollow eyes deepened, blackening into empty pits. And then it moved. Not walked, not stepped. It slid. A fast jerking motion across the hallway, as if reality skipped. One frame it was at the stairs. The next, it was standing at the kitchen entrance, 10 feet closer, still smiling, still staring. I let out a broken cry and stepped backward until my back hit the fridge. The creature leaned its head through the doorway, neck bending sideways, shoulder scraping the wall. The sound, that scraping sound, was like metal dragging across concrete. Its voice crawled out of its throat. "You looked at me, so now I can come inside." The chase through the house. I bolted. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the kitchen, through the dining room, toward the back door. My fingers fumbled with the lock. I yanked it, shoved the door open, only for the door to slam shut on its own, almost breaking my fingers. I screamed and ran toward the living room. Footsteps followed, not fast, not frantic, slow, confident, like it knew I couldn't escape. Every time I turned, its shape appeared behind me, jerking, stretching, teleporting in broken, twitching motions. At one point, when I reached the stairs, it was suddenly at the top, blocking the way. So I stumbled backward and ran to the basement. I didn't want to go there. God knows every horror story screams, "Don't run into the basement," but it was the only door between me and the thing. I threw myself down the stairs, hit the concrete floor, rolled and slammed the basement door shut. I locked it, then pushed an old shelf against it, then a chair, then boxes. I collapsed in the corner, panting, shaking, terrified. Silence. For a full minute, nothing happened. And then, tap. A single, gentle tap on the other side of the basement door, followed by another, and another, slow, rhythmic, like a fingernail casually knocking wood. Tap, tap, tap. Then the whisper. "You invited me in," when you read her words. My stomach twisted. This was my fault. The diary wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. I didn't respond. I couldn't speak. The tapping stopped. Silence again. Then, the lights in the basement flickered. Once, twice, then went completely out. Darkness swallowed me. Pitch black. I curled into myself, shaking uncontrollably. And then, from somewhere in the room, from a corner I couldn't see, came the sound of long, slow breathing. It was inside the basement. I wasn't alone. The darkness whispered, "Tonight, I watch you from the inside." Story 6. The night it wanted my name. It didn't just want to watch me anymore. It wanted to become me. The darkness in the basement felt alive, thick, suffocating, pressing against my skin like cold hands. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything except that slow, deep breathing. Not human breathing. Too long, too hollow, like lungs carved into a cave wall. I pressed my back to the cold concrete, too terrified to move. The breathing shifted, from the corner, to the pipes, to the ceiling. It was moving around me without touching the floor. No footsteps, no weight, just sound, just presence. My throat tightened as something brushed the back of my neck, cold as frozen metal. I jerked forward, trembling. Then its voice whispered again, right beside my ear. "You read her words, so now your name belongs to me." My heart stopped mid-beat. It wanted my name. In the diary, the girl wrote something like that on the last page before she vanished. It asked for my name. It says I won't need it after tonight. And now, it wanted mine. The light came back for a moment. The basement bulb flickered once. For a fraction of a second, the room flashed into existence, and I saw it. It was inches from my face, its head tilted sideways, its jaw dangling too low, its eyes two hollow pits filled with a shifting darkness that felt like hunger. And then the light died again, pitch black. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I could only hear that breathing, closer now, right in front of me. And then I felt its hand slide across my cheek, long fingers, thin, cold, wrong. "Say your name, and I will stay." Stay? What did that mean? Stay in the house? Stay inside me? I covered my mouth with both hands so tightly that I tasted blood. I wasn't going to say anything. I wouldn't give it my name. I wouldn't let it inside. But then it started whispering a name anyway. My name, softly, slowly, dragging every syllable like it was savoring the taste. I froze. No, no, no. I never said my name. Not once. I never spoke it aloud in the house. How did it know? The diary. When I flipped the first page, my name was written faintly in the margin. A ghost of handwriting. A smudge. I thought it was some old stain or faded note. But now I realized it was copying, learning, repeating. It had known my name from the moment I touched the diary, and now it used it to call me. "Let me in," it whispered. "Let me wear you." I ran in the dark. I didn't think, didn't plan. I just exploded off the floor, running blindly through the darkness, slamming into pipes, knocking tools over, tripping over boxes. Behind me, the breathing stopped, then restarted on the ceiling, above me, moving fast. I screamed and dove for the basement stairs, feeling the old wood under my hands as I crawled upward. Something long and cold wrapped around my ankle. A hand, thin fingers tightening like bone cables. I kicked violently, slipping out of its grasp, barely reaching the top step. I slammed into the basement door. The barricade I built was still there. Boxes, shelf, chair. I shoved them aside with wild strength I didn't know I had. The thuds behind me grew louder, closer. The creature was climbing the stairs, slowly, deliberately, enjoying the chase. I yanked the door open and ran. The house wasn't safe anymore. Every corner of the house felt wrong. Every shadow stretched toward me. Every window reflected its shape distantly. I stumbled into the living room, just in time for every light in the house to flicker violently. Then all of them burst, a dozen tiny pops like glass snapping under a boot. Darkness flooded the rooms again. I backed away, heart racing so violently it felt like it might burst apart. The house creaked, not like settling, more like breathing. Then I heard it, a soft tapping, from the wall, then the ceiling, then the floor. It wasn't walking. It was inside the walls, moving through them, chasing me. I ran to the front door, unlocked it, yanked it open, and froze because it was standing right outside, tall, crooked, shadowed, smiling that same carved, unnatural smile. It tilted its head, like it was grateful I opened the door for it, like I'd invited it out. I slammed the door shut so hard the frame cracked. I turned, and my reflection appeared in the TV screen. But it wasn't my reflection. It smiled. It stood behind me in the reflection, even though no one was behind me. Its whisper crawled from the speakers. "Say your name, and I will be you." The only way out was the diary. The diary. It started all this. It invited it. Maybe it could trap it again. Maybe that's what the girl tried to do, but failed. I grabbed the diary from the couch and held it tightly. The pages fluttered wildly as if blown by invisible wind. The house groaned. The windows rattled. The handwriting on the last page rewrote itself. Fresh letters forming in front of my eyes. Finish what she couldn't. My hands shook as I flipped the page. Blank. Another page. Blank. Then a faint line began to write itself. Close your eyes. I didn't want to. I was terrified of what I'd see when I opened them again. But the house started vibrating, walls bending inward, shadows crawling up my legs. I had no choice. I squeezed my eyes shut. Instantly, the breathing stopped. The vibrations stopped. Total silence. Then a voice whispered, not from the walls, not from the floor, not from behind me, from inside my head. Say my name, and I will leave. My mind shattered with fear. It wanted me to say its name, but I didn't know it. Unless the diary had told me, unless it had been whispering it the entire time, hidden in the static, in the scratching, in the margins of the pages. I heard every whisper from the last 5 nights echo through my skull. The sounds weren't random. They were syllables, fragments, pieces of a name. I inhaled sharply and whispered, "Watcher." The word burned in my throat. For a moment, a horrible, endless moment, nothing happened. Then the diary snapped shut, hard enough to cut my thumb. A scream exploded through the house, a sound so loud and raw and ancient that the walls shook like they would collapse. The shadows retreated, the cold vanished, the house fell silent. When I opened my eyes, it was gone. The final twist, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking, crying, barely able to breathe. It was over. I survived. But as I exhaled in relief, something caught my eye. The diary. It had opened itself again. Just one page, with one fresh sentence written in the same faint handwriting as before. Names can be borrowed. My blood turned to ice. Another sentence formed beneath it. Thank you for lending me yours. The room grew colder. The mirror on the wall captured my reflection. My reflection smiled back, but I wasn't smiling. Slowly, my reflection lifted its hand. I didn't, and in that hollow, dead winter voice, my reflection whispered, I am inside.